David Locke's weekly interview is brought to you by the Murdoch Auto Team. And David Locke joins us right now. David, good morning.
Good morning, David James, Patrick Kinahan, Friday, sign the week's coming to an end, sign to get talk to two of my favorite people. I just spent 3 days with Kevin Graham, 2 days, it was 2 days, but it felt like three with Kevin Graham, and now you get an hour with him coming up. I mean, it is old home week around here.
It really is, and we're looking forward to him cackling his way through whatever. It'll be great.
As long as he doesn't invade Idaho again, we're all good. That is still one of the greatest radio bits of all time, when Kevin Graham decided to invade Idaho. Why? What did Idaho have? Little did he know that what we really wanted was Scott Gerard and Hans Olsen, and we get them without the invasion.
The NBA draft is in the books, David. The number one surprise to you was?
Alex Sarr not being willing to work out with Atlanta and choosing to go to Washington instead. Sorry, that's pretty boring, but the idea that Washington, which has really been the death knell of any NBA player in career for the last 30 years and hasn't made the playoffs in forever and hasn't made a conference finals and suddenly becomes your selection, and that he wouldn't work out for Atlanta was really, I thought from a league-wide standpoint, was truly stunning. That's probably not what you were looking for as an answer, but that would be it. I do think Isaiah Collier going from the number one, on a local level, Isaiah Collier going from the number one high school player in the country to the 29th pick is pretty stunning, but it's not as unheard of as we're making it sound. Like Hardy for Dallas was the number one or two high school player. I mean, he was called six-star. Like, that was like coming out of high school. They called him six-star because he was beyond a five-star. And then he became a second-round draft pick, and he's become a decent NBA player. Dallas needs him to become more after they trade Tim Hardaway this offseason. So it's not totally unheard of, but it was surprising that he slipped to 29. But I think he was going to be 20. Like, all week long, I had talked about that Collier suddenly was talking about being in the 20s, and I thought the Jazz should trade up. At that point, I think you have to trade up to get him if you're the Jazz, and I was kind of losing my mind on our set from picks 21 on when all those trades were being made, and every single one of those trades, the Jazz had the capability to make the trade with a better package, and they weren't making it, and I was like, why are they not trading up to get Collier at this point? Well, I guess they knew what they were doing.
I think you and I are on the clock now because we both wanted Cody Williams, and it's exactly who they got. So you look at it from that perspective, much like they had last year, we literally saw them in real handwriting that they had doped out Hendricks as the ninth player going. Justin Zanuck talked about how he knew how the draft was going to unfold. So they got the player that they wanted. So that's 2 years in a row. I take a level of confidence in that because they're doing all this research and whatnot. And if they got the player they wanted, it should be good news.
Yeah, and these guys are really have some similarities, right? In that the cliche is the Michelangelo David, right? If you ask Michelangelo about David, he says it was inside the stone. He just had to find it. Well, these guys right now are blocks of granite, and they both have a NBA player that might not be the greatest art piece of all time, which if you have ever been fortunate enough to see the Michelangelo David in person, it is one of the most awe-inspiring things you'll ever see. So let's not go too far. But they both have the pieces to be absolutely fabulous. Both Taylor Hendricks and Cody Williams peak out on positional size. They peak out on length. They peak out on athleticism. They peak out on body movement. They peak out on their ability to slide their feet. Now they got to figure out how to play. But neither of them handled particularly well. We'll see on both their jump shots. Both of them made their shots in college, but not at a particularly high volume. Can they create some offense on their own, or are they just going to be catch and shoot guys? Well, that would be rather mundane for both of them, but that's both of them kind of have similar possibilities of what they can do with themselves. And it's going to be really interesting to see how both their bodies fill out inside of that athleticism and then whether they can add skills. We talked about Cody Williams last week. There was that 300-pound mound sitting in the middle of the lane that really limited a lot of what he could do. I'm going to be interested to see if there's more to his game. It feels to me as though watching Cody Williams, and I talked to you guys about this last week, and it was a 3-play sequence where he showed 2 of the 3 were turnovers, which I think is exemplary of where he is, but where he showed like a little burst and a little bit of a wiggle that I think could develop. Taylor Hendricks, I still think is just going to be a closeout attacker, straight line player. I don't see him becoming a like off the bounce creator at any point in time. But hey, let's not limit guys what they can do. They're really skilled and they're really young.
Do you think the Jazz commit to the really young guys and move multiple veterans? Do you think they're going to bring the young guys along slowly and stay with some of the familiar faces we've watched the last couple of years?
I think it's really clear that the Jazz do not want to just you got to if you don't earn your minutes, it's problematic, and I think that's true. That seems to be a real philosophy of Will Hardy's and also the front office. But if Taylor Hendricks earned his minutes last year by going down the G League and doing his things and got his minutes late in the year. But he wasn't like if you had started Taylor Hendricks in front of Kelly Olynyk and John Collins to start the year, you would have had 1 mutiny and 2 a disaster on the court. Because training camp, it wasn't close, right? Like he wasn't at their level or even close. So I don't think you can just give away minutes. With that said, there probably needs to be a little paring down on the roster of guys that are blocking any opportunity or blocking development. And you've got to look at the roster and figure out, like, well, if we now have Filipowski and we now have Collier and we now have Williams, who is in their way in a manner that they actually can't, or even frankly, for that matter, Kessler, Sensabaugh, George, and Hendricks, who's on the roster that prevents us being able to play this guy in a manner where he can be successful. And if that player exists, then you might need to see if you can pare down the roster in that manner.
Ainge talked about in his postseason press conference that he wasn't sure yet whether George could be a full-time point guard, distributor, all that stuff. Remains to be seen, and they bring up that he didn't play that at any point until he got in the NBA, which obviously is tough. So I'm wondering, do you think the drafting of Collier says anything to that?
No, I think Collier has an incredible skill set and was available at 29, right? Like the same way that it had, I don't know who, but like, if some player that was really, really talented slipped down to 29 at a different position, I don't think it would have said, oh, they're set on Keontae George as their point guard either, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I got you.
So, no, I think this was a case where, like, hey, we're going to find out on Collier, but, like, you've watched him. Like, like his first, go against the Colorado, like the Cal and Colorado games are the ones I watched most recently. And then he has another late game. I can't remember who it was against, maybe Washington, where he's great.
It was Washington, yeah.
His first move is crazy. Like, he literally is zip code. He's like literally sending guys into different zip codes with his crossover. There just aren't guys in the league. He's got a shake and a early ball control move that like it's elite. It's like elite. It's ready right now. Now, what happens in the next 2 split seconds, I'm not sure is ready entirely. Like, but I think his natural passing is really pretty good, actually. I don't think that was a great team to be on either. So, no. And I was listening to somebody on with Alex and Jeremiah who was really killing their head coach for being an offensive, neophyte. I don't know if that's true, but I don't know anything. I don't know enough about college basketball to know if that's a fair criticism or not, but that was what was being said.
Do you think it's more important to send somebody into a different zip code or area code?
Well, that's a great question because I've debated which of those is more appropriate to use in my calls, so I don't know. And I am trying to figure out what the new phrase for a telegraphed pass is because nobody actually knows what a telegram is. So therefore, telegraphed pass is a phrase that has to go away also. So, it's better than butt naked open, which has been used before too. So, I've changed it to to the zip code or area code open.
Go with zip code because area codes actually overlap now. It isn't really necessarily clear when you call 801 or 385 or 435 where you're calling.
That's a really good point, David.
If I'm calling 435, I'm not calling in the metro area.
But here's the problem with that.
What?
Who uses a zip code for anything anymore?
There's that.
Postal Service.
So people take their cell phones and move to different areas. You don't know.
Right. I agree. I'll go zip code.
No, I'm talking about when you dial.
I know.
Dial? What is this dial thing you speak of?
When you swing, when you don't call your
dialed in.
friend, when you don't call your friend because he's got a 9 in his number and you're too lazy.
And who knows anybody's number anyway? I only know my wife's. That's literally it.
Fair point. Yeah, I think I know my dad's, and I know my dad's, and I know all of my childhood friends' home numbers, and they aren't very valuable anymore.
I don't have a home number.
That's right.
David Locke joining us here talking NBA draft and looking ahead to the summer. When you say guys who are blocking the way, I know you don't want to get into specific names and all that, but do you think the pace that those decisions move at is measured, or do you think that they might be bold? How about that?
So what I really actually think you're asking me is,
I think there's 4 or 5 veterans on the team who could be moved.
I'm going to change your question.
And
I'm going to change your question.
Is it 1 or is it 4?
Well, I thought what you're at. Well, I think here's the answer to the question. I don't know the answer, but here's the way I would phrase the question. Are they going to move players for perceived value, or are they going to move players for the sake of moving players?
I believe the answer to that is perceived value.
So then they won't be very bold, because I think they're going to have a hard time getting perceived value for some of their players. They've had a hard time in the past. And so unless something breaks where someone really needs someone, I don't think they're going to get a lot of value for some of the guys that we're talking about that could be moved. And so you're better off keeping their value is going to be, let's phrase it this way. Their value is going to be higher on our roster of what they give the team than what the pieces that they would get in exchange for them.
I just think Ainge likes to split everything down the middle 70-30. So it makes it hard because he demands top dollar for everything.
So what you're saying is the rule we had in our house when dessert came out was that one person cut it and the other person gets to choose the piece, which inevitably makes the first person cut it very evenly. You're saying that Danny Ainge cuts the cake and chooses.
That's exactly what happens.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure I understood.
That happened in my house, which is why the pie had little lines all over it. My brother took about 3 hours to cut the pie. Come on, let's go.
That's right.
While I'm young.
TK just took the pie and told everyone else to screw it.
Hey, it's Jersey.
That's right. Make your own beeping pie.
Who do you think of the young veterans participates in Summer League?
Well, I suspect that all of them will be involved in Summer League training camp, which is probably the most important part, right? That they all will participate in practices and the system and working together. And so Collier works next to Keontae, and Cody Williams gets to read the offenses, and Taylor Hendricks works on various things in a different realm, and Walker's there to work with them. And so I think all of that's really important. I would not be stunned if Cody Williams does not play Summer League. That ankle sprain that he had at the end of the back season, and then when he controversially played in the Pac-12 tournament, and then from reading a bunch of articles of the training he did in Santa Barbara at P3 recently, it doesn't sound like he's at 100%. So I don't know how much of the workout circuit he went through, and maybe he has been doing full workout circuit, but I wouldn't be surprised at all if we found out that Cody Williams was going to rest that ankle and not participate in Summer League. We've been willing to have guys sit out Summer League in the past, and I think that might happen here. That's just supposition from reading a bunch of articles about the ankle sprain he had at the end of the year. And then I think Walker's involvement could be, limited to Salt Lake City. You also have Kenny Lofton trying to get time. And maybe trying to figure out. But then Walker might be really invaluable because you may be trying to figure out if Kenny Lofton can play something other than the 5. Because it's going to be really hard for Kenny Lofton to play the 5 in the NBA. And you have Filipowski, so he's going to have to figure out how to play the 5. And probably have to – from watching Filipowski, I think Filipowski's going to have to learn how to play the 5 switching. I don't think he can play drop coverage in the NBA. He just does not have any verticality, and I don't think he has at least, hey, this is ridiculous because I don't have the scouting chops that the guys that are really good at, but I didn't see a good second movement, and the key to drop coverage is a second movement. there's just a lot of players. So I think we'll see some guys in Salt Lake that we don't see in Vegas. And then I think we'll see some guys go through training camp to get relationships and spend time with them that we may never see on the floor.
Looking ahead, trades and free agency. I know big game hunting gets people excited and all that, but all the names that are out there, they don't really seem to fit or work for the Jazz. Do you see something out there that might? I mean, like you mentioned, Dallas is going to move Tim Hardaway Jr. Right? Only he's 32. That doesn't seem like a great idea for the Jazz. Paul George is 34. That doesn't seem like a great idea for the Jazz. Is there something out there that is a good idea?
Free agency-wise?
Free agents or trades, just, the first they do the draft and then the veterans move, and however they move, how do the Jazz get in on it in a way that makes sense?
Yeah, I got to say, I think that you're using your cap space on trades and extensions. I don't – there aren't many players out there that, move the meter for me on a free agent standpoint. And maybe even more than that, there's some players I'm really interested in. They're not big name players, but they're actually young players that haven't developed, haven't gotten a chance in the place where they're playing right now. And so to me, it's maybe we should go take a flyer on them. But one of them's a kid named Wendell Moore, who's in Minnesota, who played in Duke, who I actually thought was really good and just hasn't played at all. And something's wrong. He's played very limited, and he's 2 of 18 from 3, and he's actually a good shooter. Something's gone disastrously wrong there. But even if you go get him, which is not an important name, or even someone like him, how's he fitting? We already have Keontae, we already have Collier, we already have Sensabaugh. What are you doing? You're sending him down to the G League. If you're getting, your point on Tim Hardaway Jr., I don't need Tim Hardaway Jr. at 32 playing in front of guys. So, honestly, no, I don't really see any, Tobias Harris is being mentioned. We're going to be mentioned by every single agent in every single conversation because we're the team with cap space. And so it's going to be kind of garbage, frankly. Let it, everyone needs to let it roll a little bit because we're just going to get mentioned because agents need to mention a team, and you're going to hear Utah, so-and-so and so-and-so are interested in this player. Well, go look at the other two teams have cap space too, because I'm pretty certain those teams are going to be Detroit and, somebody else are going to be mentioned. And it's not that. It's just the agents trying to get interest in this player. And so, yeah, I don't see a lot of routes right now by which you're adding 2 or 3 pieces that move you from a, whatever win team we are right now, it's debatable, and puts you into a 45 or 50 win team. There's not this is our best case scenario. If we do these 3 things, we'll be able to make the moves that we need to make. I don't, unless I'm missing it. I don't see those names anywhere. And right now I don't see those trades anywhere either, frankly.
David, we appreciate it as always, and we will try to talk to Kevin about invading Idaho.
Are you planned that you're going to bring up to embarrass him, or are you just going to be nice to him?
We'll discuss that in the next break. Okay. I mean, it's an hour. We got time to do both, honestly. We can be a little nice and then hammer him on something at the same time.
If you need any help and information, let me know.
Text away. Send us your notes.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you, David. Talk to you later, buddy. See you.
There's David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz. Kevin Graham, long-time, 3-time, right? Salt Lake radio sports personality. He's going to join us in studio at 9 o'clock. Should be hilarious.
3-time to date.
To date. Good. Excellent point. DJ and PK, it's 97.5, The Zone.